Welcome to StopFake, the place where we identify fakes and debunk them to set the record straight on disinformation about Ukraine. I'm Marko Suprun, and this week we bring you the following stories. Children killed by Ukrainian mines in Donbas. IMF policies deprive Ukrainians of their land. Norwegian diplomats recognize Crimea as Russian. And students in Ukraine must renounce Russian relatives. So let's get to it. On October 1st, 2018, the deputy commander of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, the DPR, Operational Command Edward Basurin, announced that as a result of a Ukrainian mine detonating near the eastern mining city of Horlivka, one Ukrainian soldier was killed and two others gravely injured. Soldiers from Ukraine's 58th Motorized Infantry Brigade, 15th Battalion, were victims of their commander's criminal negligence, Basurin announced during a briefing devoted to the DPR's alleged military successes of September the 30th. Ukraine's United Military Command says Ukraine's military did not suffer any casualties on September the 30th. Horlivka and its surrounding area was peaceful during this period. The 58th Brigade did not report any casualties during this period either. There were also no reports of soldiers killed or injured in the city of Konotop, where the 15th Battalion is based. The contact line was never on Horlivka territory, so the Ukrainian military had no access to that area, explains Parliamentary Human Rights Commissioner for Donetsk and Luhansk region, spokesman Pavlo Lisyansky. Quote, "The militants don't want to accept the blame for the death of these children, but local residents know exactly whose mine this was, and they don't believe the militants," wrote Lisyansky in a Facebook post. Ukraine's presidential humanitarian envoy to the Minsk peace talks, Member of Parliament Irina Gerashenko, stressed that Kyiv strictly adheres to the Ottawa Convention, which requires states parties to destroy their stockpiled anti-personnel mines. Ukrainian forces have disarmed many illegal mines found on territory they recaptured from the separatists, she noted. This week, a dubious expert from the Russian Defense Ministry television channel Zvezda warned of the grave consequences that Ukrainians will face as a result of IMF land reform requirements. Quote, "The people will be left without land," he said. Currently, there is a moratorium on the sale of farmland in Ukraine effective until January 1, 2019. Ukraine has been under pressure from the IMF to lift the sale ban, and calls to rescind the moratorium are getting louder. Land reform, however, is not an IMF demand that precludes the dispensing of the next tranche of Ukraine's financial support. Zvezda's so-called land expert, Igor Druz, is a former advisor to the defense minister of the separatist self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. Druz claims, quote, "Land reform will deprive people of land and leave it in the hands of transnational corporations which will plant GMO crops throughout Ukraine." Ukraine's pro-Russian opposition bloc of former members of the disgraced Regions of Party of ousted President Viktor Yanukovych espouses the same views and rhetoric. Such pronouncements resound widely after each IMF visit to Ukraine. Land reform stopped being an IMF requirement in 2017. In March of 2018, IMF Ukraine representative Jost Ljungman told the Novoye Vremya newspaper that mandatory land reform had to be postponed because more time was needed for its effective preparation. One of the tenets of Ukraine's approach to land reform is that only Ukrainian citizens would be allowed to purchase farmland. Kyiv has yet to determine the size of plots allowed for individual private sales in order to safeguard against speculative resale during the first 3 years of ownership. Ukraine's Ministry of Agriculture, together with international donor organizations, is working to change public opinion about land reform, currently a topic of endless political speculation and myth-building. A recent European Court of Human Rights decision ruled that the ban on farmland sales violated the rights of Ukrainians who own that land. The moratorium violates Ukraine's constitution and the European Convention on Human Rights. A diplomatic delegation from Norway arrived with an official visit to Crimea, Russian media announced on October the 3rd. The leader of this diplomatic delegation is Henrik Weber, who says Russia's occupation of the Ukrainian peninsula is legitimate and all sanctions imposed against Russia in protest of this occupation are ineffective. Weber and a group of public figures, academics and entrepreneurs arrived in Crimea on September the 30th, and pro-Kremlin media immediately called the visit official and its members diplomats. Henrik Weber and his wife Mette Rosenlund are private entrepreneurs who are in the concrete business, according to reports by Norwegian publications VG and TV2 Norge. The couple launched an organization called People's Diplomacy Norway, call themselves People's Diplomats, and are using their visits as attempts to legalize the Russian annexation of Crimea. Pro-Kremlin media eagerly picked up on this narrative and have unleashed a wave of stories claiming Norway is close to recognizing the official Russian status of Crimea. After Russia annexed Crimea following a referendum held at gunpoint, Norway called the referendum illegal and did not recognize the annexation. Norway's position on Crimea is clearly stated on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs official website. Norway regularly supports all declarations and resolutions against the illegal annexation. This is not the first visit by Weber to annex Crimea and occupy Donbas. His previous visit to Crimea was harshly criticized by the Norwegian Foreign Ministry. The ministry has clear recommendations that Norwegians not visit Crimea, as such trips can help to legitimize the annexation, says Foreign Ministry State Secretary Marit Berger-Resland. Russia's federal television channel Rossiya aired one of its more outrageous fakes last month, claiming that Ukrainian universities are requiring that students write letters to the university administration renouncing their relatives living in Russia. The September 6th edition of the Vesti program featured one Yekaterina Yankovich, who fled Russian-occupied Donbas to the Rostov region in the Russian Federation. Yankovich told Rossiya TV that she sends parcels to her relatives in Odessa as they have no means of subsistence. Yankovich says she sends food, money, and clothes to her relative in Odessa. She says her relative complained about the university administration, who had demanded she write a renunciation of her relatives living in Russia. Quote, "She can be expelled from the university for her contacts with Russia. She's very scared and she doesn't even text me from her own phone," Yankovich said. Well, we at StopFake located Yekaterina Yankovich's relative in Odessa. Her name is Anastasia Kovalyonok, and she is studying medicine at Odessa University. She confirmed to us that Yekaterina Yankovich, the woman in the Vesti story, really is her aunt. Kovalyonok called her aunt's claims totally absurd. Everything in it is untrue and has absolutely no basis in reality, she said. In the 4 years she has been studying in Odessa, she has never been summoned by the university administration, and no one has inquired about any of her relatives in Russia or anywhere else. Kovalyonok also said her aunt lied about sending her food and clothes. "I'm in Odessa, she's in Rostov province. I haven't heard from her in 4 years, she added. That's it for this week. You can find more dissected disinformation on our website, stopfake.org. Be vigilant and don't consume fakes. If you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, remember, send it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.